Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Egan Shir Torah, Moses Boston. We'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. All the men here in the main shul, all the women in Ezras Noshim, and everyone joining in through the telephone hookup and the live stream. Bruchim Aboim. Tonight's shir by Rabbi Becher, sponsored by Mr. Meir Exter, Zechusar for Shlema for Meir Ben Sarah, Dov Reuven Ben Rivka, Sarah Bas Dasha, and Amanda Bas Francine. So Yishachar Yisrael. To have the great schus of sponsoring a shir, or to put an ad in the dinner journal in honor of the upcoming dinner of Egan Shir Torah next Wednesday, August 23rd, to honor any of the Magidei shir whose shiurim you've enjoyed, and have a chelik and abatzas Torah of Egan Shir Torah worldwide throughout the year. Call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the Kavod Avos, Rabbi Mordechai Becher, Shlita, noted international speaker on wealth and possessions, a Jewish approach. That's my cover to corner by Becher for tonight's drasha.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. I want to talk about three major ideas regarding possessions and wealth and the natural human desire to acquire things. I mean, it's not unusual. It is actually not abnormal that we want to own stuff. From the very moment a child is able to grab, they'll grab things and they'll say, sometimes the kid's first word is mine. This is mine, sometimes people's last word as well. But basically mine, right? And there's something basic within human nature to desire possessions, and the truth is, a lot of the wonderful benefits that we have in the world, things like electricity, things like the internal combustion engine, many matters from which we benefit continuously were motivated by people who wanted to make money, which is in itself, that's not a terrible thing. Right? So we have benefited from this. The whole world has benefited from people who want to make money, and that's motivated them to try to invent things. Now, there are some altruistic people, etc., that is certainly so, but it is a major motivation, and it's something which the Torah recognizes. So, for example, and this is a very strange idea, but we've heard it many times, where we are told, Vayivase Yaakov levado, Yaakov remains on the other side of the Yabok River. He's running away from his brother Esav. He's got his family with him. And we are told that Vayivase Yaakov levado, he stayed on the other side of the river. So that means putting himself in danger, possibly putting his family in danger. And that's where, of course, the Malach struggles with him, fights with him. And the Gemara in Chulin, famously, Rashi quotes it, not the entire thing, but he says, Amar Elazar, Nishtayer al Pakim Katanim. He waited on the other side of the river because he had left there some small clay jugs. Pakim Katanim, small clay jugs. And the Gemara says, Mikan l'tzadikim, shechaviv aleihem mamoinam yoser migufam. From here we see that the righteous love, or their money, their possessions are dearer to them than their body. That sounds very strange to me, right? I don't know. I have read about, I don't think I know personally any Rishoyim, can I think? Not know. But I have read about Rishoyim. They seem to be much more into their possessions than the tzaddikim that I know. Baruch Hashem, I've known some tzaddikim. The idea that the possessions are dearer to them than their body. So he's willing to risk his body, risk his life in order to, I left some stuff on the other side of the river. What did you leave over on the other side of the river? Some small jugs. That seems to be incredible. And then the Gemara makes it even more problematic. The Gemara says, Kol kach lama. Why? Why are their possessions so dear to them? Lefi she'ein poishtin yedehem begezel. Because they do not stretch out their hands in theft. In other words, since their possessions were not stolen, therefore they are dearer to them than their bodies. Now, again, to me, imagine I've been introduced at many places. So imagine, I don't know, someone introduces me. I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Rabbi Mordechai Becher, who is not a thief. Now, let's leave aside whether that's true or not. But, I mean, certainly, right, even granted that it is true, I would not look at that as a great compliment. I mean, seriously? I prefer no introduction than someone introducing me that way, right? This is Rabbi Becher. As far as we know, we did a background check, no known convictions for theft, right? He has one outstanding parking ticket, but otherwise, pretty impressive. So, and the Gemara says this about Yaakov. We're talking about Yaakov Avinu, who basically, why does he love his possessions? Because they're not stolen. So I did hear one explanation of what it means that tzaddikim love their possessions more than their body, in the sense of what you can do with your possessions, with your money, with your property, is much greater than what you can do with your body. If I would decide to build an orphanage or a base medrash, and I would say, Sugya and Kiddushin, granted, next perek, which started, I think, today, right, is Kiddushin, but mitzvah boy yosem b'shlucha. So it's a mitzvah to do things yourself rather than through a shliach. So I say, yeah, I'm not going to hire some contractor. That's a shliach. That's not mitzvah min amahadrin. That's not the mitzvah in amuchar. So I get a shovel, which, judging from what I've seen at Levias, most Jews have no idea how to use a shovel, right? And I start digging, and I mean, how long do you think it will take me to build an orphanage? And the most destitute person would probably not want to go into a building that I built personally, right? It would be sakonas nefashos mamash. It would be like a danger to your life. So on the other hand, if I have money, I can hire professionals. I can pay people to do it. I get a plaque on the wall, and the wall will actually be straight and smooth. It'll be a decent wall. I do it with so therefore, yeah, possessions are important because they're an extension of myself. I can do so much more with my possessions. Should I give a plug for the dinner? But I can do so much more with my possessions than I can with my body. And so therefore, some would say that's what it means. Chaviv aleim mamoinam yosem megufam. Their possessions are more dear to them than their body. But that explanation, that pshat, ignores the second part of the Gemara. It ignores, the Gemara says why their possessions are more important. And it says why, lefi she'en poishtin yadayim begezel, because they don't steal them. It doesn't say because you can do more with your possessions than with your body. It doesn't say they can go further with your money than with your arm. It does not say that. It says because they're not stolen. And one more point about that phrase, Lefi she'en poishtin yadayim begezel. Let me ask you something. Why doesn't it just say Lefi she'en gozlin or ein gonvi? What does it mean ein poishtin yadayim begezel? They don't stretch their hands out. I mean, the only form of theft is stretching your hand out. What does it actually? I mean, you think about that statement. Maharal tells us kol divrei chachamim kach heim. Every word of the sages is precise. It's exact. When the sages say, because they don't steal, they phrased it in such a way that makes us think. Hopefully, you're supposed to think, right? It's like it's mutter to think. Most poskim are makel, right? So, but you're allowed to think. And you look at this and it says, ein poishtin, they don't stretch their hands out. So I heard from my Rebbe, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, Zichron Tzadik Livracha. He explains it in the following way. He says there's two ways of gaining possession of something. There is one way is through control. Through control, force. That can happen through I grab something and steal it, chas v'sholem. That can happen through sometimes an illicit type of business practice. That can happen through a conquest. That can happen in many different ways. He says, however, a tzaddik, the only way a tzaddik takes possession of something is if it's something not through control, but through earning it honestly investing themselves in it. So there's like with the idea of a kinyan, the idea of when I say this is mine, is if I say this is mine, there are two ways of saying that. Right? For example, I say this is mine, this pen is mine because it's under my control and it's in my property. Okay? That's mine. But when I say this hand is mine, it's not because it's under my control or it's in my property, it's because it is part of me. It's part of me. Is that so far so good? So Rabbi Moshe Shapiro explains that a kinyan, an acquisition of something which is obtained by investment of the self in honest work, honest labor, or honest intellectual effort, then the thing that I possess through that is not mine because I control it. It's mine because it's part of me. Because I invested myself in it, so therefore it becomes part of me. That's a kinyan which is close to me. Am I making sense? It's a kinyan which is close to me because it has become part of me because I invested myself, my time, my life, my intellect, my labor into that object, into that real estate, into that possession, whatever it happens to be. On the contrary, the more sometimes, and he quoted from Telzer Rosh Hashiva, who said that you can tell which things are more mine. He says the more possessions I take acquisition of, the further away they are from me. Right? But if let's say I say, that's safer, I want to learn that safer, and I want to make a kinyan on that safer, I want to acquire that safer. Once I acquire it, is it further away from me or closer? It's closer to me. It's part of me. Right? Property, the more real estate that I have, then obviously I can't have it all around me. It's got to be further and further and further away. Poistin yadein. I've got to stretch my hands out. Things which are not intrinsically mine, things which are not mine because they're part of me, tend to be further from me, tend to be further away. The phrase poistin yadehen begezel means that a tzaddik understands that nothing he owns does he own just because he controlled it, just because he was able to get it. He was able to stretch his hand out and get it. A tzaddik understands that everything he has is only his because he invested himself in it, in honest effort. That's how Yaakov understood it. Every single thing Yaakov had, as he says to Lavan later on, I was up all night, I was consumed by the rain, by the heat, etc., and I was faithful. Everything that he has, he didn't have to stretch his hand out to get something from far away. On the contrary, what he owns is part and parcel of him. It's part of his very essence. Because when he looks at that object, there's some of himself invested in it. This is alluded to in the Torah. The Torah tells us, Lo sashoik sachir ani ve'evion. Do not oppress a poor person that you hire. It says the following, B'yoimoi titein scharo. You must pay him on the day that he does the work. V'lo sava alav hashemesh ki onihu. Do not let the sun go down before you pay him. Obviously, police can say, if there's an arrangement where there's a contract, pay him on the 30th of the month or the 15th, okay. But if there's no prior arrangement, by that evening you must pay him. And the Torah gives me a reason. The Torah does not always give a reason for the mitzvah, but sometimes it does. And the Torah here says, you know why you have to pay him immediately? Ve'elav ki onihu, he is poor. Ve'elav hu noise es nafsho. What does that mean? Towards that salary that you are giving him, noise es nafsho. How would you translate that? He gives, he carries his very soul for that. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, Gemara Baba Metzia says, Lama ze oila be'ilam, why does this guy go up a tree? He might have to go onto the roof. In other words, he endangers himself. There are many, many trades and professions where you are in danger. If you're a roofer, you do roof tiles. You're an electrician, infectious disease physician. There are many areas in which a person puts themselves in danger. In fact, there's a parenthetically, very interesting tshuva of the Igros Moshe. Someone asked him, and I have no idea who it was, it's anonymous, But someone said he wants to play professional football for his parnasa. It's hard to imagine. It's a Jew. Okay, whatever. Anyway, he wants to play professional football. Is it permitted for him to play football for parnasa? And he asked, because there's two issues. A, he could be injured. He could be injured. And B, he could injure others. Not only could he be injured and injure others, but there's a possibility, faint, but a possibility even of death to himself or others. Interesting question. Now, this was written before they knew about the severe concussion injuries that football. So I don't know if Rabbi Moshe would have reviewed it, but revised it. But be that as it may, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein quotes this pasuk and the Gemara, he says, we see from the Gemara that it's permitted to put yourself in some level of danger for the sake of parnasa. Are you allowed to be a contractor, go up on the roof, put tiles? Yes, you are. Is it mutter to go on the ship? When you come back from a journey on a ship, do you not say hagoimel? But you're allowed to go. You go on a plane, you may say hagoimel, you're allowed to go. You drive into Manhattan, but you don't say hagoimel, but you're allowed to go. It's probably more dangerous, but either way, right? So in all these situations, you're putting yourself in some degree of danger for the sake of parnasa. And that's what the Posuk says. Posuk says, ki elav, ve'elav hu noises. He's giving his very life for this. So, leaving aside the halachic aspect that it shows you that it's okay to put yourself in some level of danger for the sake of parnasa, but Rav Moshe Shapiro understood from here also that it's telling us something intrinsic about how people that an honest living means noise es nafsha. He's given a little bit of himself for that. If he's doing it honestly, he hasn't found shortcuts. He hasn't found a kunst to get the money without working. He hasn't found some way to scam the system. No, he's given his life, right? Because time is life. It's irretrievable. And when a person works for you, what's he given to you when he works for you? He's given you a section of his life. And you would dare to hold back his pay because of... He's given you a little bit of his life. How do you hold back his pay? And Reb Moshe Shapiro said, he quoted Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, who Reb Chaim said, I don't know if it's in the Ksovim, but he quoted Reb Chaim as saying the following, that when a person works for you, someone's working in your field, in your factory, he says the way it works is that the worker, because he's invested himself in the work, has now been koine, has acquired a chelek, a portion of your field, of your produce, of your property, of your factory produce. And when you pay him, you are a type of buying him out. You're buying his share out. Making sense? No, you're following? In other words, that the worker, because he's invested himself in my field, in my factory, through that, he has acquired a chelek, a portion in that product. So now, when I pay him, in effect, I'm really buying back from him the portion he owns in my product. I'm buying out his shares, so to speak. It's an amazing idea. And what it tells me is that the possession of objects, the working for objects, is something which is actually holy. Something which is kadosh. That's what it's saying here. And that's why Yaakov sees possessions as something chaviv yoise megufan. Because for his body, he did not work. We got that free. Kodesh Baruch Hu, Aviv ve'imo. 3 partners contributed to me. Right? The body you didn't work for. But the possessions, I invested myself in. I worked for, put honest work into it, intellectual effort, etc. Then it's really his. So that is one aspect of possessions we should understand, that there's something very, very beautiful and deep about the idea of owning something, but not owning it by being poishet yad, by stretching my hand out and controlling something outside of myself. But when I own something which is really part of me, because I invested myself in it, that's something which is very beautiful, and that's something which is tzadikim chaviv aleim amoinam yoser migufam. That is point number 1. Point number 2, when it comes to possessions, is a famous posuk which the Gemara says, the entire Torah, or the entire essence of Torah, is really hinged on this posuk. And you all know it. Posuk in Mishlei, B'chol derachecha da'ehu. In all your paths, in all your ways, you shall cling or know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara in Brachas, Darash bar kapara, Ezohi parsha katana. What is a short section? Shekol gufei Torah tluyim ba. That all the essence of the Torah depends on it. Bechol drachecha da'ehu v'hu yasher achasecha. In every path. Thank you very much. Oh, there's a cup holder and everything. Wow. It's very high tech. Thank you. So, and in fact, there's a siman in Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Reish Lamed Aleph, which is Shekol Kavanoisav Yiyu L'Shem Shamayim. All your intentions, your direction, your aim should be L'Shem Shamayim. Interesting. The word kavana means intent, but it also means direction. What's the kivun? Be'ezo kivun, right? In modern Hebrew, hachvanat neshek means aiming, right? Adjusting sights, right? So shekol kavanoisav yulush shemaim. All your aim in everything you do is aiming towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Shulchan Aruch says he talks about the idea that sleep could be a mitzvah, not during my shir. There it's a serious aveira, right? Up there with avodah zara. But in any case, but at other times, right? Sleeping could indeed be a mitzvah. It depends on your intention. In fact, the Chovos Halvavos says that there are things which are osur, and there are things which are a mitzvah. Now we all know, what do you mean? There's things which are osur, prohibited. There are things which are mutter, permitted. And there are things which are obligatory. Chovos Halvavos skipped the category of permitted, things which are okay. Right? There are things which you have to do. There are things which you're not allowed to do, and there are things you're allowed to do. But Chovos Halvavos says no, because on all those things, divrei reshus, things you're allowed to do, depending on your intention, they're either a mitzvah or an aveira. Very hard, he says, to find anything which is neither a mitzvah, eating, sleeping. If you eat and sleep for the right reasons, that's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. If you eat and sleep for the wrong reasons, it's an aveira. If you go and do exercise for the right reasons, it's a mitzvah. If you exercise for the wrong reason, it's an aveira. So the only things which are neither mitzvah or avera are involuntary actions, like breathing, right? So that's it. You don't have a choice. You're not exercising your free will in breathing unless you are a whale, right? But in general, right, we don't come up for air, make a conscious choice, breathe. Okay, no, humans don't do that. But everything else, divrei reshus, they are things which can either, depending on why you do it. And indeed, the Rambam, in a beautiful, beautiful passage in Shmoina Prakim, the Rambam says this. I'm reading from the Kafach translation. Rabbi Moshe says it's the best translation of the Pirush Mishnayos. So he says this. He says, Zu Torah hashleima hamashlema soisanu. This Torah is complete and completes and perfects us. Translation from the Arabic. It was written in Arabic originally. So the Hebrew we have is a translation. Okay, just pointing out. All right. Yodas Torah Chovos Halvavos is also written in Arabic. So what we have is a Hebrew translation. So Rav Sa'ajik, okay. All right. So Torah Hashem Tmima Machkimas Pesi Meshivas Nafesh. He says the Torah Hashem, which is perfect, which rests the soul, he says, Lo tzivsa b'shum davar mizeh, did not command asceticism. Eila ratzasa shiei ha'adam tiv'i, holech b'derech memutzas. The Torah wants a person to be natural and to walk in a intermediate path. Yoichal mashemutzeloi lechol b'mitzua, should eat what is permitted to eat in a moderate way. Yishte mashal mutaloi lishtois b'derech mitzua. Drink what you're allowed to drink in a moderate way. Yivneh sa'aretz, build the world, but tzedek, with justice, uva mishpat. Lo sheyagu ba'omaris uvaharim. The Torah does not want us to live in mountains, on mountain tops, and in caves. Lo sheyilbas sakvatseme. It doesn't want us to wear coarse clothing of sackcloth and coarse wool. V'lo sheyagias gufi anu v'yanu. It does not want us to hurt our body and to cause extreme exhaustion. Here's Hiralzeh, and the Torah commanded us regarding this. B'mashahiz b'nazir, b'kabbalah amru, where the sages tell us with their tradition regarding the nazir, where it says v'chiper olav b'ashechot al hanefesh, where the nazir must atone for that which he sinned al hanefesh, against the soul. And Rabbi Lazar Kapar says al eza nefesh chata, against whose soul did the nazir? He didn't hurt anyone. And he says, Al eza nefesh chata, al shemana atzmo min hayayin. He refrained from drinking wine, something which the Torah says is permitted. And then the Gemara goes on to say, Haloi dvarim kal v'choimer. Im mishet sir atzmo min hayayin sarach kapara. Someone who refrains from wine needs atonement. Hametzar atzmo mikol davar. Alachas kama v'chama. How much more so someone who refrains from the normal benefits of this world? It's a fascinating idea, and he's telling us that is not what the Torah wants. The Torah does not want the person to live a life of suffering and asceticism. The normal house, not in a cave, normal possessions. I was recently in Kaput last week. Cappadocia in Turkey is called Kaputkaya in Turkish and in Aramaic, and in fact is mentioned in the Gemara numerous places, right? Mishnah in Ksuvas, Ma'is Kaputkaya, Ma'is Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva goes to Kaputkaya, gives a shir. Reb Meir turns up at the shir after he thought he'd drowned. Reb Nosna Bavli saves a child by examining him before bris milah. They called the kid Nosna Bavli. I mean, it comes up, Kaputkaya comes up a lot, right? Beautiful place, right? There are these volcanic stone formations made of ancient lava, etc., etc. People live in them. There are people who live in these caves. Now, they may be comfortable caves, but the Torah does not want us to be cave dwellers. Right? It does not want us to live. It wants us to live normal lives. And it's interesting, the Rambam discusses this at great length. And the Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, puts it this way. When, the whole book, the Kuzari, is basically a discussion between a pagan king and the first few chapters between a philosopher, a Christian and a Muslim, and the king. And then the king basically speaks to a rabbi, Chacham, and 98% of the Sefer is this discussion between the king and the rabbi. And the king slowly becomes closer and closer to Yiddishkeit and eventually converts. The story is well known. So in Maimar Gimel, the king asks the rabbi, he asked the Chacham, he said, describe to me a chassid. Describe to me a pious person. A chassid. This is well before, this is the 1200s this was written, so it's before the Baal Shem Tov. So he means by chassid, it doesn't mean a chassidish yid. It means a chassid, a pious person. Not saying that a chassidish yid is not pious, but the term chassid here is used to mean pious, right? He says, so describe to me a chassid. Describe to me a chassid. So the rabbi, who's obviously Rabbi Yehuda Levi talking, he says, Moishel Ir, a ruler of a city, a mayor of a city, knows every neighborhood of the city very, very well. And the mayor will know that certain neighborhoods need more frequent garbage collection, and certain neighborhoods need more police, and certain neighborhoods need better water drainage, and certain neighborhoods need more parking, and certain neighborhoods need more parks. And the king says, whoa. He says, I asked you to describe a pious person, a chassid. You've described to me a mayor of a city, a politician. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested. I'm a king. I know what a politician is. I want to know what a tzaddik is. What is a chassid? And Rabbi Yehuda Levi says, my dear king, I am describing to you a chassid. A chassid is someone who knows, like a mayor, knows every neighborhood of the city and exactly what it needs. He says the chassid knows every aspect of himself, every aspect of his body and his soul, his emotional health, his personality, his spiritual health. And he knows every portion of that, and he knows and is prepared to give to each section of the self what it needs when it needs it in appropriate proportions. He does not ignore one aspect of the self. He doesn't feed one aspect at the detriment of another. He, like a mayor, an ideal mayor, it's not a political statement, he knows, like a mayor, what each aspect of the city needs. And not every part of the city, not every neighbourhood needs the same thing. Certain neighbourhoods don't need a lot of police. Certain neighbourhoods need a lot of garbage collection. He knows that. The chassid knows, the Rabbi Yehuda Levi goes on to say, that his senses need to be stimulated. You know what? He says you need music. You need music. And you need, the eyes need to see beautiful things. It's good to go and see beautiful landscapes and artwork. That's part of what the human needs. And the human being also needs intellectual stimulation. And the human being needs physical exercise. And in terms of food, needs a variety of foods. So, and obviously the neshama has its needs. It needs kirvas Hashem, it needs tefillah, it needs all these things. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi says possessions and acquisitions and comfortable homes and so on and so forth, they are part of what the chassid understands and gives to his or her self. And this is something which we have to understand, that again, these are not done instinctively, but these are done through decision. He decides what he needs. He decides what he wants. It's not just an on-the-spot, intuitive, impulsive process. Impulse is not a good thing to be guided by, because impulse is usually not exactly free will. Impulse is something which is, let me have that. Little kids are guided by impulse. And part of the job of parents is to try to guide them not to be controlled by their impulse. There are adults who unfortunately never grew up or were never given that guidance, and they are still basically people of impulse. You could have people who are absolute billionaires, literally billionaires, richest people in the world, and they don't like another person, and their impulse is, I want to beat you up. And they actually have tried to. There are two people right now who have challenged it, two of the richest people in the world, who literally challenged each other to fight each other physically in a cage until, I think, what are they, 5 years old? I mean, seriously? How much, this is just like, I want to do it, so I'll do it. Like, that's it, no decision. But Rabbi Yehuda Levi says that's not what a chassid is. A chassid is, I want to do this, let me think about this. Is this right? Is it wrong? Should I do it? Do I need it? Do I not need it? What you need and what you want are two different things. Right? Need and wants. Remember Rabbi Moshe Shapiro saying that I forgot the context. I remember where we were, maybe it was in Shir. But he said that Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, didn't go out much. He's a philosopher. He sits there and thinks, right, whatever. Right. So his students said, look, there's a new marketplace in Athens. Let's show it to you. It's like a mall, a new mall in Athens. Right. So they take him. He says, okay, fine. So they schlep him to the mall, and he's walking around the marketplace, and he's looking around. And he says, wow. And they're saying, what do you think? He says, and he said, never have I seen so many things that I do not need. Which, of course, any of you who've been to, right, you go to anywhere pretty much, any commercial establishment, right, 99% of the stuff is stuff you do not need, right? That's just the way it is. Right? There used to be on the planes, I think it went bankrupt or something, there used to be something called Sky Mall Catalogue. Anyone who used to fly, right, a long time ago, right, remembers there was a Sky Mall Cat, which is basically, it's a magazine of things to buy from the plane. Like you take down the phone number, or and you can buy it, right? And the entire catalogue were things that there is not a single human on the face of this planet that actually needs a single item on that catalogue. It was unbelievable. One which stands out to me was the beer catapult. The beer catapult. It's basically a small fridge which you have cans of beer in the fridge. And it's got a little door, like a beer can sized trapdoor on the fridge, and you have a remote control. And you're sitting on your couch watching football, and you go click, and it shoots a can of beer in the air, which you grab, and you drink it. The beer catapult. Of course, the problem with this is that after a certain amount of beers, right, you won't be catching it too well, right? They'll be smacking into your head, right? Which is part of the plan, because then you'll be damaged enough that you want to buy another one. That's like, you'll go to the catalogue, what else do they have? Right? It's unbelievable, right? The beer catapult. Someone with an engineering degree. That means spent 6 years studying mathematics and physics and forces and right? And this guy used the incredible power of the human brain to design the beer catapult. I don't think a Nobel Prize was given for this, right? Although Nobel Prizes have been given for things as bad. But nevertheless, so there's this idea that the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says the chassid is a prince, is a mayor, is a ruler of a city who decides what he needs, and by the way, sometimes there are luxury. I'm not saying you don't have to have luxury. Luxuries, certain things are a need. The Rambam says in that part in Shmoina Prokim that I quoted from before, the Rambam says if you're feeling a little down, he says you should actually go and buy something which costs a little more than usual, eat better foods than usual, listen to good music, see beautiful scenes, hang out with friends. He doesn't say hang out, but he says, walk around with friends, right? And that's fine, because sometimes luxuries are also needed. It's not bad. So it's just as long as it's done with a direction, kavanah, right? You're directing it towards something, a higher purpose. I want to be a better human being. If I don't eat properly, I'm grouchy. If I'm grouchy, I snap at people, right? I don't speak nicely. It's that someone comes for tzedakah, I'll give them about half of what I normally do, right? Etc. It's like, so that's not good. So that means eating is a good thing. I need to eat properly, right? And so on and so forth. These are all part of what the chassid does as the moishel ear. So that's the second point regarding possessions, wealth, etc. Point number 3, and this is something which is a little deeper. We know that David HaMelech said in Tehillim, Yegia kapecha ki soichal, ashrecha v'toiv lach. If you eat from the work of your hands, ashrecha, it is happy for you, v'toiv lach, and good. And the Gemara famously says in Brachas also, in Chulin, the Gemara says that ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, you'll be happy in this world. V'toiv lach, and it's going to be good for you ba'olam haba, in the next world. So that means working for earning something with the work of your hands, and by work, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to actually sweat, could be intellectual labor, but again, Yegia kabech soichel, that's good in olam hazeh and in olam haba. That's very interesting. Why is that so? And the Gemara says something even more astounding. It says this, Gemara in Brachas, Gadol hanene miyegia yoser miyarei shemayim. Greater is one who benefits from his own efforts than one who is God-fearing. Shocking. What does that even mean? So again, I heard from Ramosha Shapiro the following idea. We know that the Beis Yosef Karo, who actually went to yeshiva in Turkey, where I was, Edirne, Adrianopolis. So he wrote most of the Beis Yosef there. So anyway, when he got to Eretz Yisrael, goes to Tzfas, as you know, wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He also wrote a sefer called Magid Meishorim. Magid Meishorim he had a Magid, a Malach, who would come to the Beis Yosef, and every parsha, Rabbi Yosef Karo would ask him a question, and he would answer the question. He often gave him Musar, but he'd answer his question as well. So one of the questions that Rabbi Yosef Karo asks the Malach is on the purpose of creation. He says, I understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is meitiv, derech hatov, right? He is good. He is perfectly good. And I understand olam chesed yiboneh. The world was created based on chesed, kindness, Hashem's loving kindness. He says, but why, if Hashem wants to give to us, why does he not just give? Why do we have to go through the struggle of life? Why do we have to go through the ups and downs? And every life is full of ups and downs. And every life has got struggle. Right? So he says, and in terms of if you look at history, the amount of suffering, the amount of, it's horrific. So why, if he wants to give, just give it to me. Why does he have to make us go through, right, jump through the hoops? And so the answer that the Malach gives is famous, very famous, I'm sure you've all heard it, Nahama de Kisufa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want the goodness that he bestows to have any lack, any negativity. And since Nahama de Kisufa means bread of shame, if I receive something without having earned it, if I get something without deserving it, I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us that all the good we get should be something which we earn and we deserve and is owed to us, as opposed to just being a random handout. That's the Beis Yosef, that's the Magid Meishorim. Problem with that is, and the Ramchal discusses, he doesn't actually discuss the Beis Yosef, but the Ramchal talks about this idea, which is this, that here's the basic problem with that answer. Who created shame? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I have a better idea. Rather than creating shame in the human being, and now having to do a workaround called Olam Hazeh in order to avoid the shame, I have a better idea. Don't create shame, then you won't need the workaround, and then you'll be able to give us what we want to get, what you want to give us, and I won't feel anything bad about it. Just, you know what I mean? Just one less feature. There's a feature in the human being called shame. Delete shame, right? Take out that, for there are plenty of people without shame. You can see them all the time, right? So delete that from humanity, and then just, you'll give me the good, and there won't be any chisaron, there won't be anything lacking at all. Fine. Interesting question. Whether that's legitimate to ask that question, the Rambam says Moreh Nevuchim, it's not. But let's pretend it's okay to ask. So the Ramchal is addressing the very same problem, but I think he gives a little bit of an understanding of what probably Rabbi Yosef Karo meant on a deeper level. And he says the following. The goodness, Elak Kodesh Baruch Hu is shalom, b'chol minei hashleimus. He is perfect in every manner of perfection. He is good in every aspect of goodness. He lacks absolutely nothing. He's completely self-contained and independent. That we all know, these are ikrei emunah. These are basics of our faith. And therefore, because he wants to give, because derech hatov lahetiv, it is the way of the perfectly good to give, and therefore, he also, because he's perfect, and his goodness is perfect, the goodness he wants to give has got to be perfect goodness. But there's only one perfect goodness that exists, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Which means, logically speaking, in order to give us the perfect good, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to give us what? Himself. Which is not possible. How is that even possible? So therefore, what's the closest thing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give to us that's possible for a creature to receive is a relationship, a closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if I'm given the opportunity, if I'm given closeness, similarity to that goodness of Hashem, He's given, in other words, He wants me to be as much as possible like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in the world of Ruchnius, when we talk about closeness, that we don't talk about how many centimeters away you are. What we mean is how similar you are. That's what closeness means in Olam HaRuchni, how similar you are. So for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us Himself means He gives us the ability to be like Him, as similar to Him as is possible for creatures, for us. But that requires something very important. Remember, we mentioned HaKadosh Baruch Hu is completely self-contained and independent. That means the only way for me to be similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to be as independent and self-contained as is possible for a creature to be. I cannot be completely like Hashem, because at the end of the day, I'm a nivra, I'm not a boire. But I can be very similar. How? How can I be that way? The only way is if HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a world in which I can actually become similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through my own efforts. I can strive through my own free will for perfection, for closeness, for similarity to Hashem, or chas v'sholem, go in the opposite direction. In other words, and it's going to sound like a paradox, but if you think about it, you'll understand it, is this. If Hashem would make us already similar to Hashem, we will be completely dissimilar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not a paradox. Why? Because if I am made like Hashem, that means I'm not like Hashem. Because no one made Hashem. There's nothing outside of Hashem. He's completely shalom b'chol minei hashlemus. There's nothing outside of Him. Which means the way for me to be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to also, for the goodness and the perfection, not to come from outside, but to come from within. And the only way that can come from within is through the power of Bechira, of free will. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the entire world in order to give us the ability to become like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, i.e. Shalom, B'chol minei hashleimus, as much as is possible for a creature, and to earn it through our own efforts. And therefore, deep, deep, deep down within the human being, there is something that says, I don't want something if I didn't earn it. I'm embarrassed. The way the Yerushalmi phrases it, Amar of Yudin Bar Chanin, he says, Simana da'achil min chavra. How do you know if someone consumes something that belongs to someone else? He says, Bohis mistakil bei. He's embarrassed to look into his face. He can't look at his face. But the way the Yerushalmi phrases it is very significant. Because what that means, the Yerushalmi is talking about, it's not just a feeling of embarrassment, it's a lack in the relationship. If my relationship with you is that I'm a receiver and you're a giver, I can't look you in the face. Like I can't stand there as an equal. I can't stand there as a relationship which is close. Because at the end of the day, I've received and you've given. There's an inequality there. But if I have earned what I've got, if you maybe gave me a job and I earned all of it, then I can actually look at you in the face. There's no shame there. And so when it comes to our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we want to be able to not bohis li'istakule ba'ape, we want to be able to stand there as beings and have a relationship with Him. At the end, obviously, we can never be actually like Hashem, but to the degree possible for a creature, we can achieve something of that. We can achieve something of that shleimus, something of that independence. And that's why it's so deep down within us that we have such incredible joy and such incredible pride when we actually earn something. We did it ourselves. That's not a bad thing. It can be bad. It can be ego. But There's something deeply holy about that idea, because it's based on this concept that the whole world is based on, that what I only will get what I only will receive what I've worked for. The Ramchal says it at length, discusses at length in Derech Hashem. In Olam Haba, you don't get an iota more than what you earned. There are no handouts, there are no bonuses, there is no, nothing. No 100,000 extra miles if you buy the credit card, nothing. Only what you earn do you get. Nothing more, nothing less. And that is godlike. That makes us similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why working, Yegia kapecha kisoichal, ashrecha v'toivlach, it's not just about earning a living, getting a salary. It's much more than that. It's the earning a living and getting a salary and building your acquiring possessions. That's just an external physical symbol of the real purpose of humanity, which is to earn our place in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To earn, through Yegia Kapecha, to earn the possibility of standing as an independent person without shame in the presence of the Boira Olam. It's astounding, but that's what we could do. Vatachasrehu ma'at me'elokim. And he made us a little less than Hashem. V'kavod v'hadar ta'atrehu, adorned with glory and honor. Kavod. What is kavod? Kavod is the opposite of Nahama de Kisufa. It's the opposite of bread of shame. Kavod is, I earned this. I earned this. I worked for it. That is ashrecha ba'olam hazeh and toivlo l'olam haba. That's the idea of the Gemara. And that's why it's a very deep spiritual power in the human being to acquire stuff and to work and to just keep going, right? It can be misused, and it more often is misused than used well. But we who know the Torah, we who understand this, can understand that deep down this is such an intrinsic and basic part of the human being. And there's something even more amazing about it. This is from the Ishbitzer via of Shlomo Carlebach. You know, it's interesting. Animals don't overeat. Animals in the wild, maybe dogs, domesticated dogs, right, who've been brainwashed, right? But the animals in the wild do not overeat, right? You don't have animals walking around with acid reflux and, I can't believe I had that entire carcass. So, no, this does not happen. In the wild, animals eat and drink exactly what they need. They don't exert any more effort in acquisition of anything. When they have territory, the territory they control is only as much territory as they need in order to hunt in that territory and to keep their families safe. It's not like lion, a pride of lion is not looking at that hilltop. That's good. I want that hilltop. If they don't need it, they're not going to have it. Humans, on the other hand, Ishbitzer points out, we don't know limits. Not just in food, in everything. We just humans, it's weird, right? I mean, we don't know limits. Humans just want more. Whether it's food, whether it's possessions, it's unbelievable. Why? So the Ishbitzer says this. He says, because in the neshama has the capacity to go so far beyond itself, right? It's infinite. It has an infinite, right? The neshama doesn't have limitations, right? So he says the neshama can go from being the lowest level, and in one moment, as the Gemara says in Kiddushin, in one moment can be a tzaddik. Hirhu tshuva, right? The neshama deep down, the reason we don't feel boundaries, the reason we don't know limits, right? Unless they're imposed from outside, is because even if I was the lowest person in the world, I can reach the highest place, because that's the capacity of the neshama. He says, so the Ishbitzer says, you think Shamayim is infinite? He says, Shamayim is not infinite. Shamayim is Shamayim. He says, this world has the infinite capacity to bring us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to stand before him, kavod v'hadar ta'atrehu. He says that is reflected in the human desire an inability or ability to just continuously not know limits. And the reason we don't know limits, the Ishbitzer says, because the neshama doesn't know limits. So yes, so 3 ideas. We spoke about the idea that tzadikim chaviv aleim amoinam yosem megufam lefi she'en poishtin dem begezel. Every kinyan that a tzaddik has, he knows and she knows that it's something which is mine because I earned it. I didn't have to stretch out my hand in control. I invested myself, my life, my time, my intellect in it, and thence it's part of me, and it's honestly earned, number 1. Number 2, we learned b'chol drechecha do'ehu, as the Rambam talks about, and the Kuzari, the idea that the Chassid knows the Torah does not want me to live in a cave, destitute, starving. No, the Torah wants us to live ba'ofen tiv'i, the Rambam says, naturally, mitzua, in a moderate way, that which is permitted, not excess. And as the Kuzari says, the Torah wants us to understand, like the ruler of a city, that every neighborhood of the body, every neighborhood of my soul, my intellect, and my emotion has different needs, and all those needs, right, have to be satiated, and they're authentic in a permitted way, with understand, not through impulse, but through thought and decision-making. That is number 2. And number 3, we learn that the idea of the passion we have for ownership, the passion we have for earning a living, the passion we have for taking possession is based on something very, very deep in the human soul. The very purpose of creation was Yigia Kapecha Kisoichal. That idea that everything, the only thing we truly have is that which we worked for, that which we exercised our free will for. Yigia Kapecha Kisoichal, that when we do exercise our free will, we do work, we do attain things. That is, Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, we are happy in this world, v'toiv lecha, and it's good for us, ba'olam haba. Good evening.
Shem Irgen Shir Torah, Moses Possesions, like Rabbi Mordechai Becher for the inspiring drasha. Rabbi Irgen Shir Torah is here to help you with your excess wealth, or even if it's not excess, and help you channel it towards great use of our Botzes Torah, the Rabbim. Call Irgen Shir Torah 718-851-8651, email ist@yeshivanet.com, sponsor a share for the Tzibur, put an ad in the dinner journal, the next week's annual dinner of Irgen Shir Torah, and Vachelik and our Botzes Torah of Irgen Shir Torah worldwide throughout the year. I'd like to give a big yeshik koyach to Mr. Meir Extra for support for tonight's shares. Chusva for Shleima, for Meir Ben Sora, Dov Ruven Ben Rivka, Sarah Bas Dasha, and Amanda Bas Francine. Yeshik koyach to everyone for coming. Rabbi Chananya Ben Akash, Emer Rotzak Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lezakes, Es Yisrael, Lefikir Hebrew Torah Mitzvah, Shenema, Adonai Chofetz, Aman Tzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.